Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and as usual, I'm here to introduce you to something new to watch and hopefully provide some context and humor along the way. I'm joined again today by Darren, and the usual show notes, we continue to cover Severance. Definitely catch up on Severance if you haven't caught up on it already. A really thrilling episode this most recent week, and another episode coming just in about a day or so. And in this same slot, we will continue to cover Paradise and continue to cover a lot of films that are coming in the next few weeks. And then in the near future, full coverage week to week of The White Lotus. So stay tuned for all of that. Drop us an email. Any feedback is much appreciated. needssomeintroduction@gmail.com. Follow me and Darren on Letterboxd. I'll include the links in the show notes. And with that out of the way, let's get into the conversation. All right, Darren, I think we'll probably be spending most of the time talking about Paradise. I want to get your feel for these first four. Have you seen all four of the available episodes?
I'm up to date, yep.
A couple other things to mention. One is you told me you were caught up with everything you'd been watching, so you probably don't have a lot of time to spend on it. But for anybody who didn't finish off The Agency, I assume you finished the season?
Finished The Agency, loved it. It definitely peaked at the end.
Yes.
Fantastic final episode. And the penultimate episode was interesting as well. It just set everything up, set all the chess pieces on the board, and then the final one brought it all together. So really enjoyed that whole series, and it kind of ends on a cliffhanger, but it's one of those ones that you're looking forward to the next series, but you also were happy that it was wrapped up really well. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed you guys recapping it each week. So yeah, looking forward to that one coming back.
Yeah, definitely getting a second season of that. And like you mentioned, it's kind of a cliffhanger, but I think it's appropriate for this type of show where they're just obviously wrapping up this particular set of story, the instigating element, obviously of the spy disappearing behind enemy lines and how that resolves itself, which we won't spoil here. But yeah, I thought it was just incredibly smart, never held your hand and really makes you work to figure things out. But I found it really satisfying. And yeah, can't wait for another season. And like you mentioned, there's a bit of a cliffhanger, but it really just kind of is setting up the stakes for the next season, which I think, and it doesn't really tell us, obviously the stakes are high, but we're not sure how that's all going to play out. So if anybody is aware that this was actually is based on a French series, and season one was very close to season one of the series, and basically the cliffhanger is similar too. So I would just warn people, if you are planning to watch Le Bureau, which I think is available on Hulu, it's available in a few different places around the world. If you do want to catch up on it, you probably are going to spoil yourself, I would assume, on season two. At least, the characters are different and some of the dynamics are slightly different, but the plot itself seems to be very similar to the French show, at least so far. I will probably watch season one of the in-between seasons. I'll watch the French show just to, do a comparison, but I doubt I'll go beyond there. I don't want to spoil this show with that one, even though that's probably the better show. But you know what? I'm going to stick with the person who brought me to the dance,
This one was really good. So I saw it on there and I was going to click play, but I feel like the first season of The Agency did it for me. So I don't feel like rehashing that story, even though the French one has amazing reviews as well. We'll see.
Yeah, for me, it's like maybe if the Showtime show, it's probably a pretty expensive show. The ratings got off to a great start. It did ask a little bit for the audience. I don't think it held up as well as they were hoping for. There'll definitely be a season two, though. Potentially this doesn't last as long as the 6 seasons, I think it was, of the French show, maybe even more. So maybe I'll watch the French show if this one doesn't make it that long, because then I won't have to spoil anything. But I'll probably stick. Yeah, this will be my primary watch for sure. And I don't think they're going to take a really long time. It's not like a 3-year turnaround between shows. I think they're working on the scripts right now, is what I read in the Brotherworths, the brothers who write the show. They were talking about writing episodes for season 2. So I assume production will probably happen sometime this year, and we'll probably get another season. Probably middle of next year, I'd assume, probably somewhere around there. So I loved it. I thought it was terrific.
Oh, that's cool. And in your recaps, you were talking about the director, Neil Berger, I think, of the last 2 episodes.
Yes. Yeah.
And he does one of my favorite films. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure, is Limitless with Bradley Cooper. And I think that film is great. I've rewatched it a number of times, and it's a fun ride.
That's a fun fantasy, right? To be able to unlock your, it's like the whole fantasy of the nootropic movement, right?
Yes. Yeah. unlock the potential of your whole brain rather than
That's right.
whatever we use 30% at the moment.
Yeah, we should all use more of our brains, I think. Um, you also saw Severance. You saw episode 3 of Severance. Once again, let's not spoil that, but what a shocking turn of events, right? By the end of the third episode.
It's great. It's great that it's moving because I think because it's so dense, it could have a potential of moving quite slowly through episodes. Yeah, like you say, it's appointment TV. Me and my wife are watching it, and things are happening. It's fantastic. It's great, apart from the whole goat thing, which I'm not on board. I don't know anyone who's on board with this.
You know what's so funny about that? Like Sona, my wife was turned off by the goats. She's like, "Oh, how are you spending way too much time with the goats?" I tolerate it. I don't think it bothers me as much. I understand, like especially Ben Stiller. He likes his comic stylings. Have something more like naturalistic, and then he'll do the really weird type of comedies that he's done in the past. So I think these kind of outlandish things, which of course originated with the writer, not with Stiller, but I think that he wants the show to lean into it a little bit sometimes. But not only that, this is like the online conversation after season 1. Everybody's speculating about the goats. So I feel like they're feeding that subset of the fandom. But like to your point, I don't know anybody who is excited by the goat, plot lines. I'm like, all right, we got enough of that. Thank you very much. So hopefully we don't see too much more of it. Maybe this was just a way to keep that part of the audience satisfied. But I do worry the goats are going to be a bigger part of the story, I have to say.
Maybe that they're working towards a goat payoff, which will make it all worthwhile.
It'd be the craziest thing if the show pulls it off somehow at the end. Like, man, the goat's totally paid off. I don't think that's going to happen. For me, it's just like I think they need to minimize it as much as possible. But if you heard our recap of it, it was shocked that as the goat scene, as beautifully, designed as it was, incredible, set design, but as amazing and impressive and probably expensive as it was to shoot that and build that, I was like, I couldn't wait for it to be over. In an episode where every other scene in it was absolutely some of the best scenes the show's ever had. So it was kind of a weird combination of things.
That's true. Yep. Yeah, I agree with that.
Maybe we'll carve out a little spoiler section for Companion because I just want to bring it up for the fact that I hope you did like it. I didn't even track down if you reviewed it on Letterboxd because I was curious to get your reaction here in the conversation. This is a film that I intentionally, if I have any interest in seeing a movie, I'm just like, I don't watch trailers for it. And this is a film that I avoided trailers. And then last week, because it was tracking badly, they just started marketing this incessantly during all the football games. And I had not seen a single trailer for this film. And then all of a sudden, the entire thing was spoiled for me during the advertisements. But my wife, who went with me to see it, was unspoiled and had all the twists and turns. And so, what's your experience of having seen it as far as like the spoilers, and how'd you like the movie?
I saw the trailer, and yep, the trailer spoiled it for me. And I think the poster even spoiled it for me, the poster that I saw. So I don't know how you could market this movie without spoiling it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
And I liked it. It was a fun ride. It was a fun thriller, but I did have issues with it where I thought it could have gone more in depth in the relationship between the characters. So it's a bit of a harsh criticism that I wanted it to be something different. I wanted it to be more, and it could have gone more in any number of ways.
Yes.
But as a fun thriller / horror, it delivered really well.
Yeah, I thought the script was really smart. The funny thing about it is, as I was watching the film, when they're literally trying to mix at least 2 completely different genres and 2 different plots into one film. As I was watching it, I was like, I'm appreciating the twists, but I don't know if this film is going to work for me. And that was my opinion, maybe a third of the way through. And of course, having known the twist, I don't have the pleasure, the jolt of the twist. So it doesn't get me over the hump early on. So I'm aware of what they're doing. I think it's very smart what they're doing. And then I'm like, I don't know if they're going to be able to pull this off. And I was kind of surprised that it worked as well as it did for me by the end. And I do have complaints as well, especially towards the end as to how they resolved some of those plot points. But overall, I thought it was so much fun. There's a lot of twists in it. Anybody who's afraid of, if you've seen the trailer and you know the main twist, if that's the whole film, there's not. There's like a whole bunch more twists in that movie. There's like twists coming every few minutes. Maybe too many twists, actually. But it's a blast. I thought it was a blast, and really smartly written and made for apparently very little money when you consider how isolated it is and how limited the cast is, etc. But I thought it was like a really smart, and I do recommend it.
Knowing the first twist, it doesn't ruin the movie at all for you. It would just be an incredible surprise if you came in blind. But they could have even titled the movie a little bit different to allude to what it's about, which wouldn't have been too much of a problem and possibly would get a bigger audience as well. Yeah, cool movie. I'd watch it again.
A lot of times a movie with a twist is really so reliant on the twist that there's really nothing else beyond it. And what's so clever here is my wife did not know the twist was coming. But then, once again, can't spoil things here. It's hard to talk about this film at all without spoiling things. But when you do watch it and you do know the twist, you see how smartly the script is plotted out, because there are all these clues you see right away that something's not quite right. When he asks her about the weather, for example, or there's all these little Easter eggs that if you know what's happening, it's very clever. Or even just the conversation, how rudely they're treating her and ignoring that she's even in the room. And then you kind of understand what's happening later on. And anyway, so it's clever in what it's doing there for sure. And it doesn't ruin the movie. You're right. It does not ruin the movie. The film is written in a way as if they assume you will know what the twist is and you'll still appreciate the film. So I think really talented folks. Some of the performances are absolutely fantastic. Sophie Thatcher is terrific again. Jake
Quaid.
Jack Quaid.
Jack. Yeah.
Such a punchable face.
He's horrible.
This is what he plays now. These are just the roles he plays. These incel punchable kids.
I quite like him in The Boys. I think he's not bad, but in this one, jeez.
I've started to want to punch him in the Boys too, but at least he gets to play a hero there most of the time.
And it's laugh out loud funny as well, which I love laughing in the theater. It's a great experience.
Oh, when she starts speaking German, that whole sequence is incredible. Yeah, a lot of fun. All right. Also a lot of fun is this series. Are you still hanging in there at episode 4?
I'm hanging in there. Yeah, I actually really liked episode 4. Episode 3 was a bit of a downturn for me. 2 was great. And so the way they're doing it, each episode is named after one of the key characters in the show. And one thing with the show, which is different, there is no title sequence. There's no song.
Oh, good point.
There's no CG or AI type images that we can try to discern meaning from. It just has the title of the show and the title of the episode, which is refreshingly different, perhaps.
It reminds me a lot of Lost, where Lost at least had that, just like that, whatever that sound effect was, and just the word Lost on the screen. It reminds me of Lost not only because of the simplicity of its title sequences or lack of thereof, but also because of the whole flashing forward. Each episode is primarily structured around a flashback to a single character. I think there's definitely a lot of Lost DNA here in the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm not sure if you were a fan of that back in the day.
To be honest, I only watched a handful of episodes and I went, I don't think they're going to wrap this up to satisfy me, so I'm not going to give my time to that show.
Yeah,
and maybe I missed out. I mean, it seems like it's had a bit of a resurgence over the years and people love it, but not for me.
Just this year, it premiered on Netflix, and it was number 1 for multiple weeks. So people, this whole younger generation that missed it and they originally jumped on board with it. I lived through that whole thing, and there was a lot of fun and speculating. It was when the internet was not what it is now. Before, the internet existed and message boards existed, but social media wasn't what it is now. So it wasn't as, getting spoiled in headlines every 10 seconds. So there was a real fun element to participating in all that speculation. But yeah, the payoff at the end, and hey, it remains to be seen what the payoff for this show is going to be as well. I don't think this is going to be a multi-season show. Do you think this could sustain itself for multiple seasons?
That is a very good question. I mean, it feels like to get a show like this up, you need to have the outline for about 4 seasons. Is that right these days? And so I don't quite know where it's going to finish at the end. But yeah, we'll see.
I honestly don't know where they're going to go with this, because I could imagine they are giving Dan Fogelman carte blanche here just because they want to be in the Dan Fogelman business after the success of This Is Us.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised. It could absolutely be like, hey, I want to do the next Lost, and it's going to be a 5-season thing. Or it could be like, hey, I want to do this thing for 1 season, and Hulu's like, sure, we'll do it, just to, be in cahoots with you. I don't know. I really don't know if this is something that's planned for long term or not. It doesn't seem like the mystery could sustain it, but remains to be seen, I guess. All right, let's run through this pretty quickly. I'm going to catch everybody up on episode 4. We did bring up episode 1, but I'm going to still do a real quick run through of it just because there are things that I definitely missed that now, especially as we get to episode 4, we want to circle back to. In episode 1, we have Xavier Collins, played by Sterling K. Brown. He shows up at work. For some reason, he's angry at his son for reading James and the Giant Peach, which he's named after. So there's a lot of overwriting in this show, by the way, where it's like, his explanation as to, well, James and the Giant Peach was maybe going to be a cherry. And I was just like, okay, I'm not sure where this is all going, but well, whatever's going on there with his kids. He's a single dad. Mom's not in the picture. Definitely this is why he hates his boss, right? Because there's some kind of catastrophe that has occurred. The mom did not make it to where they are. I was going to say she didn't survive, but I guess we're not 100% sure on that, basically. And by the end of that episode, or in one of those flashbacks, he explicitly says to Cal, his boss, who happens to be the president of the United States of America, that he wishes he was dead. And he's like, I know you hate me. Tell me what you think of me. He shows up for work the next day. He makes some small talk with his chum, another security guard, whose name is Billy Pace. We find out a lot about Billy Pace in episode 4. And he gets home and, hey, guess what? His dream came true. His boss is dead. We find out that he's from Kentucky. He's this kind of like good old boy. Aw, shucks. Kind of like a George W. Bush, like, I'm too dumb to do this job, but I'm a good old boy type thing. But he's supposed to be like a Democrat. So maybe more like a Clinton figure, or maybe like a combination of both of those. He loves college basketball. And apparently he's been late nerd is the terminology, because they're referencing back to The Shot, which is when Leitner made that last second shot that ruined Kentucky's chances to go into the Final Four back in 1992. Anyway, this is all to say he loves basketball, and he keeps making basketball references. And he, in a very racist way, but in a like, oh, shucks, I'm just a nice racist guy. He's like assumes that Xavier should be way more into college basketball than he is. I think so. That's why they call him Wildcat, by the way. The name of the episode is Wildcat is Down, right? That's the name of this episode, I think. Oh, a few other things. When he doesn't immediately call in reinforcements, he knows something sketchy is going on. He investigates the crime scene. We didn't really talk about all the details of the crime scene in the first conversation, but it looks like he was dragged outside. You see like those red marks. Looks like someone probably jumped from the balcony. Is that your interpretation as well?
Didn't actually think he was dragged. I thought that was, but that makes sense. I thought that was just blood from
that might have just been right after the attack. Yes.
Falling off the actual murderer, and the murderer has jumped outside and landed in the bush, and yeah, so I'm not quite sure, but the safe was the safe open, and obviously the magic box, the magic tablet is gone. There
is a cigarette pack that he's been carrying around in that first episode. Every time he's talking to him, basically smoking cigarettes, Xavier says to him, that's going to kill you one of these days, and he like points at the cigarette pack and he says, what's in here is gonna kill me one day. Get it? And so he knew something bad was coming, and he like puts an X right on the cigarette pack, a bloody X. So I assume he marked it himself. I guess that's what happened, although I don't see the blood trail to the cigarette pack. So it is a little suspicious how the X got onto the pack, to be honest with you. And of course, he sees this. He takes it with him. Not sure what's in it yet, but he knows it's important. Then he calls in the reinforcements, tells them everything that happened. Like you mentioned, the safe is open. The inside the safe is this briefcase. The briefcase is open, and whatever was in there is gone. And of course, everybody wants this because it apparently has like all the state secrets in it. And then when they're reviewing the videotapes, they see a few things. One is that the head of security, Xavier's boss, Agent Robinson, she was sleeping with the president. So that's a little suspicious. Everybody's, like you would expect in a murder mystery, everybody's like in that White House at some point the night before. Xavier, and the tape has been modified. Looks like somebody paused the tape. It looks like Billy's sleeping. We'll find out more details about that in episode 2. And then, of course, at the end of the episode, Xavier runs up the street, pulls a cigarette out of the cigarette pack. There's an old, dried out cigarette. It's probably been in there for a long period of time. And it has a number on it, which is 812092. Any idea at all what this number might mean?
Just thinking now, maybe it's the code to the tablet, to open the tablet. Maybe.
That was my assumption too. It looks like, I was also thinking maybe it's a year, like 8/1/2092. Is that when they can go back outside? I don't know. This is probably not what it is, but it also could just be a 6-digit code that opens the safe. The only reason I thought that might not be it is because the safe's been opened. This pack still seems to be important, so I'm not sure. Maybe there is another locker or something that needs to be opened. So maybe somebody has the contents of that safe. But if it is a tablet, like you said, maybe they need to unlock the tablet, and maybe this is the code for the tablet. So maybe that's what it is. It could be something as simple as that. Yeah.
Or possibly open a door to a large facility. Perhaps
open the door that lets them out. Apparently, you can't leave this place, though. We find out this in this episode. Oh, of course, one of the things, this President Cal loves cheesy 80s music. That's something that, and 90s they reference, but I think we've mostly heard 80s stuff so far. And then we hear all these slowcore. This is actually hilarious that there's these like slowcore versions of these 80 pop songs in each one of these. And we have Another Day in Paradise by Phil Collins, because you get it, like they live in this place called Paradise, and this was Another Day in Paradise, but it wasn't like any other day in paradise. You see the irony there.
So is there a cover of an old tune in each episode? Because a couple of them, yes. I was like, "Whoa, that's a dodgy cover. Why are they playing that?" But now I think you're right. I think there is a version of a track in each. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. So that's the thing they're going with. So maybe
I mean, it's been they're 4 for 4 right now. So I got to tell you, we might speculate on what's to come.
Some are better than others.
The second one, I'm like, they have to be joking here. Like the second one is We Built the City by Starship.
Yeah, that was a tough one. But it seems like that's like a thing now, is to get a moody cover of an 80s or 90s track and put it over a trailer for something to make it feel classic and important. So
right.
Yeah.
But these are so silly on their face. I mean, I have to assume they're in on the joke here. I have to, but maybe not. maybe what I think is funny and what other people think is funny is not always lined up.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with it. Like it's deliberately funny, and then I'll enjoy it a bit more.
I think you will enjoy it more if you take it that way. Yeah. A few other things. He did take a bullet for Xavier. That is, took a bullet for Cal, and that's like kind of got him this invitation to come to this place. And we also see in the flashbacks during when the assassination attempt actually happens, there's been some kind of large scale construction in Colorado for a long period of time. People are suspicious about it, conspiracy theorists and more. And they probably have a reason to be, considering what was being kept from them, although we don't know the details of it yet. And that's what leads to the assassination attempt. And that's, of course, what brings them all to this place. With episode 2, this episode was called Sinatra, right? It was just called Sinatra.
Mm.
And this, of course,
really
is Samantha
fun
Redmond.
Episode.
Yeah, this is a great one, and an emotionally powerful one as well when you see how things turn out with her son. So yeah, this is my favorite episode of them. Seeing Sinatra become kind of a one-dimensional monster over the course of this show is less interesting than when you see her in episode 2, I should say. And she really seems like she's almost accidentally found herself in this position. We find her discover her, in flashback in the day that she becomes a billionaire selling her cloud storage company. She meets her husband at a bar and picks him up with, I'm a billionaire, have sex with me. And he's like, sure. Okay, let's do it. And
it's a compelling opening line.
That's a great one. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, she's probably just playing me, but and she seems to just be enjoying her wealth. And then her son dies unexpectedly. Then it's inferred in a way, and this show's not very subtle, but here it is relatively subtle, where it's inferred that her paranoia about missing this with her son has made her hyper vigilant. She goes to some kind of TED talk or something. This guy, everyone's ignoring him. He's talking about how the end of the world is coming. There's some kind of extinction level event coming, and no one's prepared for it. And she says, if you had unlimited resources, what would you do? And he's like, I'd start digging a hole. So she takes all her wealth and starts digging a giant hole in Colorado. And this apparently is around the same time that she meets Cal, right? Because he meets her at the same conference. I mean, he is not president yet. She does not seem to be involved in politics at all. So I guess they came up together over time. And I presume that then this apocalypse presents itself. And she's like, you know what? I've been building this giant bunker in Colorado. Maybe I have an exit strategy for a very small percent of the population.
It was a good episode. I enjoyed it because she's being set up as the big bad of the series. And then straight away in episode 2, they're showing you why you should care for her or about her and the tragedies that have beset her. So I thought it's very interesting because I really felt for her, because if you lose a child, I mean, that's just a terrible thing to happen. And you could really get on her side. She's essentially a normal person that becomes a billionaire, and billionaires are always evil, apparently.
That's right. So, could you imagine a billionaire telling the president what to do? Could you imagine that ever happening in the real world? It's crazy situation.
Yeah, fantasy. It's a fantasy.
Fantasy, totally.
So, really cool. And this actress is really good as well.
Julianne Nicholson. She's great. Yeah.
It's interesting to get a feel for essentially an evil person, the big bad of the series, but you feel for her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most interesting thing, is to see someone, and I think this is the best thing this show has done, especially in this episode, also making Cal he seems like such a goofball all the time. And then you see him when he meets her, he seems to be like a serious person there. It's like before he starts performing his politician self, right? So I liked all that. And more so than probably the next couple episodes, but this was probably the strongest for me as well. Oh, another tragic element to this is when we see these kind of details of the way this place actually operates. And you have that flashback scene where she's talking to her son, and her son's asking if he's going to go to heaven and what is heaven like. And she's like, it's any way you want it to be. And you start realizing that all these details of paradise are based on his version of heaven, which adds a whole other layer of tragedy to this whole thing.
That is interesting. I didn't pick that up, but yeah, that's cool.
Like when he says there's horses everywhere, then you realize that there's like these toy horses like in all the shops.
Of course.
And and you think about like this carnival every year. And I think that a lot of these details that are, kind of a utopian version of a suburban town in America probably come from not only her fantasy of it, but her son's fantasy of it as well.
And what a project as well. She's got unlimited money to get the best people to build this thing and to build the details of this world. It's a very cool project that she's got going.
There's a really cool sequence very early on, I think maybe the opening scene, where she's talking to that engineer and he's like, what you're describing would be impossible. And she goes like, well, here it is, build it, which was pretty great, right? It's impossible till you have to do it.
There's a great shot of the helicopters pulling the earth-moving equipment over. Oh, so cool. Yeah,
that's a very cool shot for sure. Some of the show is kind of cheap looking, to be honest. And maybe intentionally so, because they are living in an artificial place. But yeah, that was a really impressive shot, just seeing the helicopter flying into the mountain. Very convincing. Any guesses as to what this cataclysm is? Do you have any thoughts?
The climate scientist guy, I think he was talking about the ice melting and causing tsunamis and earthquakes. So I just think it's, I don't know. I think it's everything. I think the whole earth has decided that we are not worthy. I
think that she is reacting, and this is my interpretation of it, I think she's reacting to what he said in preparing for any possible cataclysm. But then I think this is a specific cataclysm. And I would assume this isn't like a nuclear war or something, because they spent years building this, and it could be something environmental. You might be right. But then there is a scene, I think in episode 2, where we see Xavier looking out the window and there seems to be some kind of explosion, right? And that's when he is convinced that his wife has died, or that's the inference anyway, because we cut directly from that shot to him angrily talking to the president. Yeah, I'm not sure. But like I said, I don't think it's some kind of nuclear war or something, because you wouldn't have 10 years of planning for something that happened that quickly. It seems like they are preparing for some world-ending event. And my assumption is that they're keeping this a secret from the population at large to keep them from freaking out. And that's part of the reason. That's probably part of the animosity between the people who survived. They're lucky enough to survive, but of course they left behind everybody, right? So
And I feel like it's a climate thing, and the fact that there was only two people in that climate guy's speech,
yeah, it
it's
says something.
almost too crazy to think about, which
Yeah,
is scary.
which is how we live our lives, unfortunately. So.
Exactly.
And of course, this episode ends with "We built this city," because you get it. She built this city.
Shocker. That was terrible. Nah, not on board with that cover at all.
God, I love the lyrics too, like the moody Marconi plays the mamba. I'm like, really? This is not the song to be like trying to drill in on those lyrics, please.
And this was the best episode. I think I did take it as a joke, this one, and I did laugh.
Yeah, I actually laughed at that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is what you're doing? Okay, episode 3. This is the worst episode.
I
And
agree.
could
Again, yep.
wrap it up
Yep.
in like 2 seconds. The Architect of Social Well-Being is the name of this episode. And that person is Gabriella Tarabi. Tarabi?
Dr. Tarabi, yep.
Yep. Who is everyone's therapist on this show. What do we find out here? We do see just some opening moments, this like a waking, like her waking up, and she has visions of her parents. We find out later on her parents died when she was young, and somehow this has shaped her. Maybe we're supposed to be ambiguous about this because it'll pay off later on, but we really don't know much about her. She apparently was like grief counselor, and that's how she met Redmond. She's also the therapist for the president. But it apparently, over the course of this, it turns out that she's very involved with this, right? Not only has she picked these people, she has some kind of strategy as to who's been picked because they are going to coalesce into some kind of new society. And she even picked Xavier. We see in that flashback that she put his name at the front of at the top of the stack. And that's the only reason he's here in the first place. So a lot of that is all of her doing. Yeah, and what else do we see here? She has sex with him in the last episode, the last moments.
Is that why she picked him?
That's right. She's like, I want a piece of that later. Bring him along.
Surely it was in the back of her mind. And that's the most interesting thing, is that this one person, it's her job to pick everybody and to create this puzzle where everybody either gets on or doesn't get on or just has a role in this society. And I don't think it really dug into why, or was interested in why, which I was interested in why she would pick all these people.
I assume they will develop that in the show. I have to assume, because like it seems like a lot of the ideas here are raised earlier on and they're not very explored because they're so focused on these kind of twists and shock revelations. And I think now in the middle of the season, it's only 8 episodes. We're here at episode 4 with the most recent episode, that now is the time to start to bring some of these themes together. And I do hope they start exploring them, because at this point, I mean, we have a pretty small cast that we've been introduced to, and they killed one of them off in this very episode. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, by the way. Oh, a couple of things that happened there too is just that Presley, Xavier's daughter, and the president's son are getting closer and closer. So that's something that's happening here. Continues to happen in episode 4. I do like the whole that the sex scene obviously happens. There's an attraction there, but simultaneously it is the whole Gone Girl thing of like, if we're in the shower, I know you're not monitoring me. I know they probably can't listen to our voices. Like it's like the agency where they're always running the shower when they're on their secret phones. And she whispers in his ear, "Don't trust Billy." What were you going to say?
Don't trust Billy. I think it's a waste if you get an actor like Sterling K. Brown and don't show his incredible physique, So I think that the shower and the lighting of that, I mean, they got their money shot there, I think.
He's one of the producer of the show, so he's just like, "Hey, I'm working on this body. You got to show it."
He's giant.
Oh, this was the scene, by the way, I was joking about last week of being like, do they have any kind of water restrictions? They could be a wasteful day of water.
I don't know if it's the actress, but her character wasn't into the way that she would switch. All of a sudden, she's seductive. She's also got secrets. She's also meant to be a bit of a baddie.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I was disappointed in this episode by the end, and I wasn't into the way that this actress was portraying this character. So
Yeah, it's also the way they write her, and very much, I don't even blame her necessarily for it, but I do agree that they don't know what they want to do with her at this particular moment. I just thought about it again in episode 4. In episode 3, you could very much say, like, well, maybe she's the one who's actually pulling the strings, right?
Mm.
So she's definitely high on the suspect list. And then you look at episode 4, and when she's like putting James on the Ferris wheel and like smiling and giggling to herself while she's watching him on the ride, they're obviously not presenting her as a nefarious in that moment. So I'm like, what is she anyway? Like, is she just like a do-gooder? I mean, that could be an interesting dynamic. Maybe she is a good person who's doing bad things because she thinks that there's some greater good. So there's ways they can make her character more interesting. But at this point, yeah, like they did nothing to flesh her out beyond her being like, I'm the one who organized this whole entire thing, says I. It's the entirety of the show. I'm like, okay, well, all right. It's also like visually not very interesting. They're walking around and talking. And meanwhile, Presley and the president's son are walking around and talking at around some of the exact same locations. So I'm just kind of like, what? I don't know. This just is it's just a weird way to convey this information.
I had concerns for the whole series after that one, but then episode 4 came and I really enjoyed Agent Billy Pace.
Oh, but I have to call out before we move to episode 4, which we definitely have to talk about, that of course, when they're having sex on the soundtrack, we hear, I think we're alone now, because they might be alone at that moment. There doesn't seem to be anyone else around, Darren.
Oh, yeah. I didn't find the humor in that one. I'm not going to rewatch it.
Yes, so that leads us to maybe the best episode of the show, Agent Billy Pace, which is this episode 4, where we meet maybe my favorite character of the show, which they kill immediately. So that makes me a little worried about the next few episodes, but there's only 4 more, so I'm definitely going to hang in there. And yeah, he seems likable enough this whole entire time, right? His great rapport with Xavier. He seems to get along with everybody. Seems to really like this girl he's dating. Mistake number 2, 3, 4 for him at this point. Yeah, and in flashbacks, we see he was hunting with his dad, killed his dad when his dad, a terrible dad, by the way, telling him to kill his dog, ends up in some reform school where he becomes the biggest, toughest guy there. By the way, when he gets recruited by this elite military force and they're like, this is our toughest guy, who's willing to step forward and challenge him? And this guy just gets punched in the face and like is completely shocked by this. This is definitely not their best fighter, by the way. I think that was all talk.
I liked Billy's story. Even from the very first episode when Sterling K. Brown was interacting with him, he just had this great sense of his own comedic timing, even though he's supposed to play a tough guy and a little bit dim as well. He just did it really well, and he had a great episode in this number 4 to do everything that the character required, and it was a real shame to lose him, I have to say.
I agree. I completely agree. It's like, once again, I really liked him here, and I'll jump ahead a little bit, but I love at the end where he's just like, I really got to talk to you tomorrow, Xavier, but just for today, I'm like, oh no, he's dead. Yeah. Famous last words. Oh, by the way, I have to call out in episode 3, as if episode 3 wasn't bad enough in different ways, when Billy covers with Jane and says, they're like, why did you stop the camera, Billy? What was going on? And he's like, well, we were playing Wii. Redmond and the doctor, the psychiatrist, what's her name again? Dr.
Tarabi.
Dr. Tarabi. They just roll their eyes like, oh, they're playing Wii again. Like, should they really just take that at face value?
Yeah. And that's it. And that's the reason. All right, you guys.
That was it. They let him go. Yeah. And in episode 3, I was like, are you crazy? What are you talking about? Like that's the worst cover story ever if they wanted to use that as a cover story. But now by the end of episode 4, when you realize that they were both basically double agents, if they're working for Redmond and they had secret tablet or whatever, they probably would have given it to her because, or had killed the president. She would be the first to know, I would presume.
That's right.
So I don't think that they probably are taking him at face value that it was, they were indeed playing Wii, which by the way, does not turn out to be a bullshit story because we hear him talk to Presley, the daughter, Xavier's daughter, about getting together at night and playing on the with the Wii. So means that she was sneaking into that house too. She might have been there that night. Who knows, right? She's another person who may have been in that house at that time, at that night.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that's right.
Not that I predict she's the killer, but who knows? You never know with these type of shows. And of course, the huge reveal here is that not only, Billy seems to be a really nice guy and Xavier trusts him implicitly. He really does seem to be like, I would never betray you, but he is keeping a huge secret, which is that they send out these astronauts, basically, including the scientist who is the wife of one of the most popular bartenders in this place, and outside to see if it's livable out there. And indeed it is. And it is Billy's job to kill them all. So that's a pretty crazy twist. The outside world is indeed livable.
Yeah, it was incredible. And the way that Xavier saw the statue or the plaque in the park of these four people, and then all of a sudden you find out who these four people are, and they've left the facility to do some research, which always happens in these shows, doesn't it? Like Fallout, you got to leave, and in Silo, it's all about leaving.
Right. And
the fact that they just get murdered straight away by Billy. Yeah, it was shocking, actually.
Yeah.
Especially if you'd send out four of, assuming they're some of your best. Right. So why did you send them out to get killed? You could choose anyone to go out there and discover what's out there, but maybe they were killed they obviously killed for a reason. And I don't think it was just to say that the outside was a little bit livable or potentially livable.
Yeah, I assume that they were expecting them to find that it was less livable than it was, and they wanted to make a good faith effort. And my guess, this is all speculation on my part, that the risk there is that it was livable. And even if it's terrible, even if the chance of survival outside is really not great, that all those people inside are going to want to leave. Not all of them, but a lot of them will, because they're going to be like, well, I have to find out if my family's out there. I have to find out if our friends are out there. We need to rebuild now. If there's people out there suffering, we want to help them. And in a way, she's probably deciding for them that she doesn't want them to have to make that decision. So she's just going to be like, nope, we're going to rebuild society right here. And she doesn't want that to be made public knowledge. So that's my guess as to what's happening. I don't think she's trying to kill these people off. Is that how you read that, or do you have a different theory?
I just don't know why you'd send four of your best people out there.
Yeah. You could send like one soldier to see what's up.
Yeah, if you already know what the result is going to be, and then just get rid of them straight away. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh yeah, in the main plot, there's this annual carnival that's happening. Billy and Jane's very excited to go, apparently, although that's all a ruse. They're still going to have the carnival, even though the president's just been murdered. Interesting. They'll have another murder on the dockets tomorrow, although I guess they'll cover it up as not a murder. James finally rides the Ferris wheel. Cal's son gets to perform Every Rose Has Its Thorn, which, of course, gets played twice in this episode. He plays it, and then we get another one of these covers at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Smooth sounds of poison.
So, yeah. So, as you said before, the children are getting more and more screen time. So they are becoming more major characters in the show. So, yeah, we've got to think about where they fit in the whole conspiracy.
I can't imagine they would actually, I mean, someone might know something, like maybe his son was there and saw something. Maybe he's the one who marked the cigarette pack, or his dad told him to, something like that. So maybe that's possible, but I don't see them as being involved. I was about to change my mind there. I was going to be like, imagine, given my theory that the son was there, what if she was there also? We're playing Wii that night or something, and they came upon Cal's body, and then she escaped. But she seems like she's playing it way too cool with her dad. If she knew, like that first breakfast they have, that if she knew that he's about to walk into a murder scene. So I take all of that back.
And just as an aside, has Dr. Tarabi thought about like the next generation or the next few generations? I mean, there was a scene where they talked about DNA, and they said, well, we've only got DNA testing equipment just to make sure people aren't cousins. So is she thinking long term about breeding between all these different families to see where that goes in the future? And maybe the Xavier's child and the president's child make a good match. I don't know.
And yeah, I would not be surprised at all if we find out there's some kind of DNA screening for repopulation for sure. So by the end of the episode, Billy goes and threatens Sinatra.
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. And he's just like, if you send someone after me, make sure he's bigger than that other guy that I kicked his ass in the flashback sequence. And no, she doesn't send the biggest MF in the world. She sends the smallest one, apparently. And it's Jane, who is cold as ice when she's just, I mean, she's not only like reluctantly kills him, she's just like, I'm doing this to you. I'm like, damn, this girl's cold.
Not fun, but a good little twist. I feel like, is Billy gone for good? Maybe we'll see him. There's flashbacks left, right, and center in this show, so I feel like we'll see him
in
later on.
Flashback, yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately he's gone, and Xavier's going to need a new best friend.
Yeah. And who's left? We haven't not been introduced to many people on this show, and I don't even know how the dynamic breaks out after this. Just to wrap that up, he's murdered by funnel cake. So apparently she dosed his funnel cake. That's it. He's toast.
So we're halfway through the season. So there's only 8 episodes of this show. So halfway through.
Who would like to some of the points you were making? I don't even know, and I'm a little worried about this. I kind of liked the dynamic that was forming between these characters, and taking Billy off the board is a big problem because it's like now where we have Xavier and he can't hang out with Redmond. He probably shouldn't trust, I forget her name again.
Tarabi, you can't remember that name. She's that uninteresting a character.
That's how uninteresting she is. Yeah, Tarabi. And we do see in the coming attractions that it looks like he is teaming up with his boss. So maybe he now trusts her, but it is such a small pool of folks. I don't even know what the dynamic is going to play out. They introduced us to 4 different people and they killed one of them. So it's like, okay, well, now we got 3.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? Maybe they're relying on these flashbacks to do a lot of the heavy lifting for the story.
Yeah, at least they're all still alive in the flashbacks, which is good. Oh, by the way, the next episode I'm pretty certain is going to be the final days of Cal, because in the flashback we see him. He's getting really erratic. The son is giving a eulogy, being like, those last few days there was something wrong. And we see him also telling Redmond that he's going to tell everybody, I'm the president. So I'm like, that's famous fat last words too. Although I'm pretty sure Redmond was not his killer. So in this particular regard, she's not the murderess, but she has murdered a lot of other people though. This is what happens when you give women too much power.
Oof. I think my mic's cutting out.
That's a joke, everybody. That's a joke.
I did think, just as another aside, sorry, I did think of another show just to change tack. Did you ever see that show Under the Dome?
Yes.
Stephen King adapt. Yeah, I read the book, which I quite enjoyed, apart from the ending or, the reason why they're under the dome. But the TV show, I think I watched the first season. It was actually quite good, and it is similar to this kind of thing, although they had heaps of characters. So there was so much to do and so many stories they could jump to, and it was very typical Stephen King. That's
a very Stephen King thing, where he's really putting a whole community under the microscope in his stories always.
Yeah, so it did make me think of that. And also, funnily, one of my kids wanted to watch The Truman Show on the weekend.
Oh, wow, yes.
And I was like, yeah, great, let's watch that. It's a good film. And so another film set in a studio in a created environment. So yeah, there's a whole genre of these things.
Oh, absolutely. That's a hard one to compare to because that's such an excellent film.
True. They're all very different, yeah.
Remaining questions, so many of them. And we already touched on what is the world-ending event. You speculated was probably some kind of climate disaster. I'm guessing meteor. That's what I'm guessing. Because I saw an explosion outside that window, but I don't think it's a nuclear bomb.
Okay. Let's go. That's a good one because you can time that pretty well as well.
Now we talk about Armageddon or what's the other one? Deep Impact, where they're trying to get underground, right? So they have underground cities built and the people are trying to make it into the mountains. So
that's right. I think I prefer Deep Impact to Armageddon. in that battle.
I love it. I mean, Armageddon is so hilarious. I love when they blow up the meteor at the 11th hour, in the very last second, and it splits apart and goes around the Earth. It's pretty sure the Earth would be donezo no matter what if you're blowing it up 4 feet away from the Earth. Okay, why didn't Xavier's wife make it to Colorado? Do you have any speculation?
Yeah, good question. she didn't make it on the plane. So she was either deliberately held up or
She was on a list, so they were, but she
she
couldn't
was
make
on
it
the
back.
list.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so you're saying there's a bigger conspiracy there. So someone made sure that she did not make the plane.
I don't know
Uh,
though. I don't know if she's that important. Maybe she is because we don't know anything about her. So maybe she was. I was thinking it's just possible that she just didn't make it. Like, that they didn't give
Simple as
enough.
that.
Yeah. Like, maybe she was in the middle of something else. She was traveling for work. She might have been doing something important somewhere else. And maybe that's why Xavier blames the president. Like maybe she was trying to do something like whatever, like help people in the cities or something, even though the president already knew this was hopeless. And, he should have just been telling him, like, no, get her on that plane, no matter what you have to do. That didn't happen. And he blames him for it, something like that. I don't think it's,
So
yeah.
remind me. So her job, she was quite important in the whole thing as well. She was a scientist too, wasn't she?
She was a scientist, but I don't know if we have a full backstory on her yet.
Maybe that's an upcoming episode because
Yeah.
Xavier was chosen to be in this community, and maybe she was. Well, she was.
Oh, maybe she didn't make
She
the
was.
cut and they
She
put her,
didn't
they
make the
sent
cut.
her. Maybe they
For
sent her
some
away.
reason.
Oh,
Maybe
interesting.
she has a bit of power, or maybe she has a bit of knowledge that would be threatening to some of the people in power in this facility. And she
Tarabi was like,
deliberately
I'm going to break myself off a piece of that and you can't be around for it.
exactly. That's a good reason as any, right?
I think that's the plan. I think that's what actually happened. Tarabi was controlling
it.
all this. All right. Who has the briefcase? Any idea? Who could it be? I mean, it can't be anyone important in the show at this point, which is weird.
That's so weird.
Right.
I mean, I'm on the wiki, so I'm looking at they give the next episode titles. So the next episode is In the Palaces of Crowned Kings.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure who that relates to. I don't know who's got it.
I don't know.
Who
I mean,
knows?
because the cast is so, I mean, unless the
It's
only
so
possible,
small. Yeah.
yeah, the only possibility is that maybe like I came about this just during this conversation. Maybe his son walked in, found the body. That's why he's so traumatized by all of this. Maybe the dad was alive even at the time. His dad told him, like, take this out of the safe. And now he has the tablet, let's say, but he doesn't have the combo, but he has the tablet and he just told him, like, protect it with your life or something. Because it's the only thing that makes sense. They can't be like random guy in episode 7 has the tablet. I'm like, who cares?
No,
Why does
I know
that
who has
matter?
it. No, it's the mixologist. He's got it. He was friends
That would
with
be great.
the
That'd be
two
great.
Secret Service. His wife was murdered or sent out. He's got it. He's the one.
He was like doing lines off of it and just like, hey, can you hang on to this for me? And he doesn't have no idea what he has in his hands.
That's it. Yeah.
What does the numbers mean? Maybe unlocking the tablet. That's my guess, possibly. And who
It's
killed?
funny with these things.
Yeah.
You're trying to guess, but it doesn't matter, and it's it's an entertaining show that
Yeah.
you. I'm happy to let it wash over me, and
Mhm.
and I think, unfortunately, I think who actually is responsible for these things doesn't really matter. I don't know if it should matter to make it a good show, but it is an entertaining show nonetheless.
Oh yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. I do want to ask those questions just because I think the show wants us to ask those questions. I don't think that they've done a really good job of, for example, giving us a nice big suspect pool. Like in a murder mystery, right? The whole time you're like, oh, maybe it's them, maybe it's them. That's the whole pleasure of watching something like that, right? And of course, we have two mysteries. We have the murder mystery, the why, and then the who, right? So we have two different aspects of it, which are both fun mysteries. I just don't think that and once again, maybe like next episode could be where we get like the rogues gallery of possible suspects are all laid out. So that's possible. So it remains to be seen. It's just weird so far that they haven't already done that. They usually will try to set that up pretty early in the show, but I'm still enjoying it. The sci-fi elements of it, and at its best, some of the themes it's trying to deal with, I think, are pretty smart.
And I think you're right. We must have already met the murderer in the first episode, I think. Yeah, first or second. Because otherwise, it's silly introducing someone later in the series.
Okay, one last question I have for you before I let you go, which is, what do you predict will be some of the other 80s covers we're going to hear before the end of the show?
That is a really, really good question, and I'm going to have to think.
I have a few that I've already written down, of course.
Yeah, okay.
If there's another booty call, wake me up before you go. And we are definitely, I'll put money down on this one. We are definitely going to hear a cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World.
Great track.
Or We Are the World. There's another one. Could be.
Well, yeah,
That could be the last episode. We Are the World.
Oh, that's cool. That's a fun guessing game, actually.
I had some other ones, by the way. I had fun with this. I just died in your arms tonight.
Brilliant. Yeah. Keep going.
She blinded me with science.
Wow. You're really going with that. It's a comedic value here.
Once again, I don't know if it's the intention or not, but those covers at the end really are the comedic highlight of each one of these episodes.
I'm going to think about that all day now.
All right, well, maybe we'll circle back to it in the next episode. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what the next one's going to be. All right, Darren, I'll let you run. Thanks again for the conversation, and yeah, we'll touch base again next week. And
okay, I got a track, Victor.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Guns N' Roses, Paradise City. Come on.
Oh, Paradise City, good one. That's a good one. And we may hear that actually, although Guns N' Roses might be a little out of their price range here, but yeah, that would be a great one to put in for sure.
1987, is that right?
87, yeah, 87.
You
didn't know it was that old?
No, I didn't. Oh, out of their price range, you reckon they're not going to be able to pay for that? That's interesting.
Yeah, Poison's a bargain basement. Guns N' Roses. For sure. Guns N' Roses, like, I mean, all the kids know Guns N' Roses today. That's like contemporary music at this point. So Poison, not as much. Although I think everybody knows that song. Every rose has a thorn. And I guess, by the way, and of course, Every Rose Has a Thorn. That's Jane, right? That's the thorn. That's the rose with the thorn.
Oh, of course. Yes, of course.
That's the song that's playing when he's dying on the floor. All right. So we will touch base again next week. And yeah, an exciting episode of Severance this week too. So we'll probably talk about that briefly as well.
Epic. It's all happening.
It's all happening. All right. Thanks again.
Thanks, Victor.